What you are about to hear changed the life of one of the richest families in America forever. A man who had everything discovered he had nothing, and a boy who had nothing possessed the greatest power in the world. This is the story of David Harrison and the miracle of the Virgin Mary that no one expected. But before we continue, leave a comment telling me where you are watching from and what time it is there right now. I would love to see how far the miracles of the Virgin Mary are reaching. David Harrison was 42 years old and the owner of an empire. Construction, investments, properties, everything he touched turned to gold. His mansion was worth $8 million. Luxury cars filled the garage. His bank account had more zeros than most people could ever imagine. But all that wealth, all that fortune, could not buy the one thing he desired most in the world. David had been a widower for 3 years. His wife Jennifer had passed away, leaving him with the greatest treasure of his life, Sarah, a beautiful 12-year-old girl, golden hair, blue eyes. Sarah was everything to David, his reason to wake up every day, to work, to live. The Harrison mansion was located on one of the city's most prestigious streets. The house had been built by David's grandfather in 1953. And on the front wall, facing the street, there was something very special, an image of the Virgin Mary, hand-painted by his grandfather himself as thanksgiving for a blessing the family had once received. For decades that image remained there, through rains, winds, scorching sun. It stayed intact, as if protected by an invisible force. The neighbors respected it. Some even made the sign of the cross when passing by. But for David, it was nothing more than a family tradition. Until in March of 2021, David's perfect life collapsed. Sarah began to feel very tired. She no longer wanted to play. She lost her appetite. Concerned, David took her to the best doctor in the city, then to another, and another. The test results were devastating. Leukemia, advanced stage. David's world stopped. How could this be possible? His princess, his reason for living, was gravely ill. The months that followed were a nightmare. Hospitals, treatments, doctors, all across the United States. David spent more than $2 million searching for a cure. He took Sarah to the best specialists. But at every appointment, every test, the news was always the same. The disease was progressing. Sarah lost her beautiful golden hair. Her little face grew pale. The girl who once ran through the mansion's gardens now spent her days lying down with no energy to play. And in September of 2021, the doctors gave their final deadline, 6 months, maybe less. David Harrison, the man who solved everything with money, who could buy anything, who had control over everything, discovered that there are things money cannot buy. And his daughter's life was one of them. But what David did not know was that at the very moment his life seemed lost, someone was already praying for his family, someone he never even imagined existed. Let me ask you a question. Do you believe that some things happen for a reason? That certain people come into our lives at exactly the right time? Keep that question in your mind, because at the end of this story, you will have your answer. It was a Monday in October. David was in his office on the second floor of the mansion, trying to work but unable to concentrate. Sarah was sleeping in the room next door. The silence in the house was deafening. That was when he looked out the window and saw something that caught his attention. On the sidewalk in front of the mansion's gate, right before the image of the Virgin Mary on the wall, there was a boy, a small boy, about 9 years old, kneeling on the concrete. David frowned. Who was that child? What was he doing there? The boy wore simple clothes, worn-out sneakers, and had a school backpack on his shoulders. His head was bowed in complete silence. David watched for a few minutes, curious. Then the boy stood up, made the sign of the cross, and walked away. David thought it was strange, but didn't give it much importance. He had bigger problems to worry about. But on Tuesday, at the same time, the boy was there again, kneeling in the same place, praying silently before the image. On Wednesday, the same thing. Thursday, Friday. Every single day, at 3:30 in the afternoon, the boy appeared. David began to feel intrigued. Who was this boy? Why did he come there every day? What was he praying for? On Saturday it was raining, one of those light, constant rains. David thought, today he won't come. But at exactly 3:30, there he was, kneeling on the wet sidewalk, rain running down his little face, yet continuing his prayer as if nothing else in the world existed. This touched something in David's heart. That boy had a faith, a dedication he had never seen before. Not even adults he knew had such devotion. The following Monday, David made a decision. He was going to find out who that boy was. At 3:25, David went down to the gate. He waited, hidden behind the bars. Right at 3:30, the boy arrived. As always, he knelt before the image of the Virgin. David observed more closely. The boy was even smaller than he had thought. He had an angelic face, slightly messy brown hair. His clothes were clean, but clearly from a simple family. The boy prayed with his eyes closed, lips moving silently. His little hands were joined in a perfect prayer position. There was a peace, a serenity on his face that David had never seen. After exactly 10 minutes, as always, the boy stood up. That was when David opened the gate. "Hi," David said softly, so as not to frighten the child. The boy turned, startled. His eyes were large and dark, with the expression of someone caught doing something he shouldn't. "Sorry, sir," the boy said quickly. "I wasn't doing anything wrong. I was just praying." "I can leave if you want me to." David felt his heart tighten. That small, frightened voice. "No, no," he said, crouching down to be at the child's height. "You're not doing anything wrong. I'm just curious. What's your name?" "Tommy," the boy replied, still a little wary. "Tommy, I'm David. This is my house. I've seen you come here every day. Why do you pray at this image?" Tommy looked at the image of the Virgin, then at David. "I'm praying for a girl," he said simply. David felt something strange in his chest. "What girl?" "A girl who is very sick," Tommy replied. "The lady showed her to me in a dream." David frowned. "What do you mean, in a dream?" Tommy pointed to the image of the Virgin Mary. "The lady in blue. She came into my dream and showed me a sick little girl. She asked me to pray for her every day." David's heart began to beat faster. "And what did this girl look like?" "She had very short hair, almost bald, because of the strong medicine," Tommy said innocently, "and very beautiful blue eyes. She looked sad, but the lady said that if I prayed every day, she would get better." David felt the world spin. Sarah. Tommy was describing Sarah, but how? How was that possible? "Tommy," David said in a trembling voice, "this girl, does she live in a big house?" "I think so," the boy answered. "In my dream there was a very large garden with yellow flowers, and a very sad man looking out the window." David had to lean against the gate. The yellow flowers were the daisies Jennifer had planted, which he kept in her memory. And he spent hours looking out the window, worried about Sarah. "Tommy," David whispered, "how long have you been having these dreams?" "Since school started," the boy said, "about 3 weeks ago. The lady said it was very important to pray every day at the same time in this place." David was in shock. 3 weeks ago was exactly when the doctors had given Sarah 6 months to live, and now a boy who had never met his daughter, who lived far away, had been praying for her every single day. Can I ask you a strange question, Tommy?" David said. "In your dream, what did the girl's room look like?" Tommy closed his little eyes as if trying to remember. "Pink," he said. Everything was pink, with golden stars on the ceiling, and there were lots of stuffed animals on the bed. David felt tears filling his eyes. Sarah's room was exactly like that, pink with golden stars he himself had stuck to the ceiling when she was little, and the stuffed animals she had collected. "Tommy," David said with a trembling voice, "do you want to meet this girl?" The boy's face lit up. And that was how two lives crossed paths in a way science could never explain. David climbed the stairs of the mansion with his heart pounding. How was he going to explain this to Sarah? How could he tell her that a boy she had never met had been praying for her for weeks? Sarah was awake, lying in bed, flipping through a book. When she saw her father, she gave him a faint smile. "Hi, Daddy. You look different. Did something happen?" David sat on the edge of the bed. "Sarah, love, I need to tell you something very strange. There's a boy downstairs who has been praying for you every single day." Sarah's eyes widened. "For me? But how does he even know me?" "That's the strange part," David said. "He says he's had dreams about you, that a lady in blue asked him to pray." Sarah was silent for a moment. Then, surprisingly, she smiled. "Daddy, I've also been dreaming about a lady in blue. She told me that someone very special was praying for me." A shiver ran down David's spine. 2 dreams, the same lady. What mysterious force was moving in his family's life? "Do you want to meet this boy?" David asked. "I do," Sarah said, trying to sit up in bed. "I really do." David helped Sarah down the stairs. She was weak, but determined. Tommy was waiting nervously in the front garden. When Sarah appeared at the gate, the two looked at each other in silence. It was as if they had known each other for years. "Hi," Sarah said timidly. "Are you Tommy?" "Hi," the boy replied, just as shy. "You're the girl from my dreams. You're even prettier than I imagined." Sarah blushed a little. "Thank you for praying for me. I really need the prayers." Tommy stepped a little closer. "The lady said you're very brave, that you're fighting a really hard battle, but that you're not alone." David watched the scene with a tight heart. There was a connection between the two children that he could not explain. It was as if they were old friends reunited. "Tommy," Sarah said, "do you want to see my room?" And so began a friendship that would change everything. Tommy started visiting Sarah every day after school. David found out that the boy lived with his mother, Carol, in a modest house 20 blocks away. The father had abandoned the family when Tommy was 5 years old. Carol worked 2 jobs, mornings in a laundry, afternoons in a diner, to support her son. Tommy went to and from school alone, and every day he made a 40-minute detour just to pray for the girl of his dreams. When David learned this, he was even more moved. That boy, who barely had enough to eat, was giving up an hour of his day to pray for a stranger. "Why do you do this, Tommy?" David asked one day. "Why do you pray for someone you didn't even know?" Tommy thought for a moment. "Do you know what it's like to be alone in the world, Miss Drape?" "David, it's when you think nobody cares about you. The lady told me Sarah was feeling like that. Alone." Those words pierced David's heart like an arrow. That was exactly how Sarah had been feeling, alone in her fight. And a 9-year-old boy had understood it better than any adult. David started picking Tommy up from school every day. Carol, initially suspicious, soon realized the good intentions of the Harrison family. Tommy and Sarah became inseparable. Sarah, who for months had barely left her bed, began to have more energy to play with her new friend. They spent hours talking, playing cards, watching movies. Tommy told funny stories from school, and Sarah laughed for the first time in months. But Tommy continued with his routine of prayers. Every day, at 3:30, he would stop whatever he was doing and go to the image of the Virgin Mary. Now Sarah sometimes accompanied him when she had the strength. "Why always at the same time?" Sarah asked one day. "The lady said discipline is important," Tommy explained, "that God likes it when we are faithful, even when we don't feel like it." David watched these conversations, fascinated. The boy's faith was pure, simple, yet profound. He began to wonder, when had he lost that connection with the divine? October passed. November arrived. Sarah seemed a little better, more cheerful, with more appetite. David dared to hope. Maybe the prayers were working. But in December came the blow. The routine exam showed that the disease had progressed, more than the doctors had expected. Dr. Williams, Sarah's oncologist, called David for a private conversation. "Mr. Harrison, I need to be honest with you. Sarah's condition has worsened significantly. We are talking about weeks now, not months." David's world collapsed again. Weeks. His princess had only a few weeks left to live. That night, David couldn't sleep. He walked through the empty house, remembering all the happy moments with Sarah. And he asked himself, where was God? Why weren't Tommy's prayers working? But what David didn't know was that the greatest test of his faith and the greatest miracle of his life were just beginning. David decided not to tell Sarah about the worsening of her condition. But children are more perceptive than we imagine. Sarah noticed that her father was sadder, more worried. "Daddy," she said one December afternoon, "I'm getting worse, aren't I?" David felt his heart break. How could he lie to those trusting blue eyes? "Sarah, sweetheart," he began, but she interrupted him. "It's all right, Daddy. I know you and the doctors are doing everything you can, and Tommy is praying a lot for me. If it's time for me to go meet Mommy in heaven, I'm not afraid." David broke down in tears. His 12-year-old daughter was being braver than him, a 42-year-old man. Tommy, who was present during that conversation, came closer to Sarah and held her hand. "Sarah, remember what the lady told me in the first dream? That your fight would be hard, but in the end, she would take care of everything. I believe that, and you should believe it too." Sarah smiled faintly. "I believe, Tommy. I just get tired of fighting sometimes." "Then I'll fight for you," said the boy with determination. "When you can't, I'll pray harder." And that is exactly what Tommy did. Realizing that Sarah was weaker, he intensified his prayers. Instead of once a day, he began to pray 3 times, in the morning before school, in the afternoon at the image on the wall, and at night before sleeping. David watched all of this with mixed feelings. On the one hand, it was touching to see the boy's dedication. On the other hand, he was beginning to grow angry. Where was the miracle that Tommy kept promising? On Christmas Eve, Sarah had a crisis. She had to be rushed to the hospital. David called Carol, and she brought Tommy to the hospital. The children's hospital was decorated for Christmas. Christmas trees, colorful lights, trying to bring joy to a place filled with so much suffering. But none of it comforted David. His daughter was in a hospital bed on Christmas Eve, fighting for her life. Tommy entered the room and saw Sarah connected to several machines, pale, breathing with difficulty. For the first time since David had known him, he saw tears in the boy's eyes. "Sarah," Tommy whispered, approaching the bed. "I'm here." Sarah opened her eyes with effort and smiled faintly. "Hi, Tommy. You came to spend Christmas with me." "Of course I did," said the boy, trying not to cry. "We're always together, remember?" David couldn't take it any more. He left the room and went into the hallway, where he collapsed into a chair. Carol approached him. "David, I know you're suffering. But you need to have faith. Tommy is absolutely certain that Sarah will get better." David exploded. "Faith! Faith! Carol, my daughter is dying. For months that boy has been praying, and she only gets worse. Where is the miracle? Where is this Virgin Mary who is supposedly taking care of everything?" Carol fell silent for a moment. Then she said softly, "Sometimes miracles don't happen the way we expect, but they always happen at the right time." That night, Tommy slept in a chair beside Sarah's bed. David, even though exhausted, could not fall asleep. He kept watching the two of them, Sarah breathing with difficulty, Tommy holding her hand even while sleeping. Around 3 a.m, Sarah woke up. "Tommy," she whispered. The boy woke up immediately. "I'm here, Sarah. Tommy, if I go to heaven to meet Mommy, you won't be sad, will you?" Tommy squeezed her hand. "Sarah, do you remember what the lady told me? That you are special? that you have a mission here on earth? You're not going to heaven yet, I'm sure of it." "How can you be so sure?" Sarah asked. "Because," Tommy said, "she told me that when you got better, we would help other sick children, that our friendship would be an example for many people. And that hasn't happened yet." David, who was listening while pretending to sleep, felt something stir in his heart. The faith of that boy was unshakable. Even seeing his best friend in that condition, he continued to believe. On Christmas Day, Sarah was a little better. She managed to eat some soup, and she talked more. Tommy had brought her a simple gift, a drawing he had made of the two of them praying together in front of the image of the Virgin. "It's beautiful, Tommy," Sarah said, tears in her eyes. "That's how I feel when we pray together, protected." David watched the scene with a broken heart. Two innocents believing in miracles while medical reality was merciless. But the following week the final blow came. Dr. Williams called David in again. "Mr. Harrison, today's tests were devastating. The disease has spread very quickly. We're talking about days now, just a few days. I'm so sorry." David left the office like a zombie. Days. His Sarah had only a few days left to live. That afternoon at the hospital, David watched Tommy praying beside Sarah's bed, and inside he was boiling with rage. When Tommy finished the prayer, David called him out into the hallway. "Tommy, I need to talk to you." In the corridor, David knelt in front of the boy and looked into his eyes. "Tommy, you're a special boy, and I know you love Sarah very much, but she's very sick. The doctor said that she won't get better." Tommy shook his head vigorously. "No, Mr. David, the doctors can be wrong. The lady promised me." David felt his anger explode. "Where is your lady? Where is the miracle of the Virgin Mary? My daughter is dying, and you keep with these stories." Tommy began to cry, not out of fear, but out of pain at seeing David suffer so much. "Mr. David," the boy said through tears, "I know you're angry. I understand. Sometimes I also get angry when things don't happen the way I want. But the lady taught me something. Sometimes she saves us in a different way than we expect. And sometimes she prepares us for things we don't understand yet." David looked at that 9-year-old boy speaking with the wisdom of an old man, and for a moment he felt his rage turn into something resembling admiration. "Tommy," David said, calmer now, "and what if the miracle of the Virgin Mary doesn't come? What if Sarah—" "It will come," Tommy interrupted with absolute certainty. "I don't know when, I don't know how, but it will come. The lady has never lied to me." That night, something extraordinary happened. Sarah, who was very weak, asked to be taken in a wheelchair to the hospital chapel. "I want to pray," she said. "I want to give thanks for all the good things I have lived, and I want to ask for strength for you when I am no longer here." David, Carol, and Tommy took her to the small chapel. It was simple, with wooden benches and a crucifix on the wall. Sarah asked to be placed in front of the altar. "Dear Our Lady," she began softly, "thank you for giving me the best father in the world. Thank you for giving me Tommy as a friend. If it is your will that I go to meet Mommy, I accept. But please take care of them for me. They are going to miss me very much." David could not take it any more. He began to cry uncontrollably. Tommy came closer to him and held his hand. "Mr. David," whispered Tommy, "she is not saying goodbye. She is placing everything in Our Lady's hands. That's different." And it was at that moment, in that small hospital chapel, that David had a revelation. Maybe faith was not about getting what we want. Maybe it was about trusting even when we do not understand. For the first time in months, David knelt down and truly prayed. It was January 2nd. Sarah was back in the hospital, in a bed in the pediatric ICU. The machines showed that her vital functions were failing. Dr. Williams had said it was a matter of hours. David did not leave her bedside. He held his daughter's cold little hand and whispered, "I love you, Princess. I will always love you." Tommy was on the other side of the bed, praying incessantly. He had been praying for almost 24 hours without stopping. Carol tried to make him rest, but he refused. At 11 p.m., Dr. Williams entered the room and checked the machines. He shook his head sadly. "Mr. Harrison, the functions are failing rapidly. It is a matter of very little time. I'm so sorry." David felt as if the world was ending. In just a few hours, his reason for living would be gone. At midnight, something strange happened. Sarah opened her eyes and smiled. "Daddy," she said with a voice clearer than she had had in days. "She is here." David frowned. "Who is here, my love?" "The Virgin Mary. She's right there beside Tommy. She's smiling at me." David looked where Sarah was pointing. He saw nothing but Tommy, praying. Tommy stopped praying and looked in the direction Sarah indicated. His eyes widened. "I see her too, Sarah. She's here. She came." David looked desperately at the two children, because that was how he now saw Tommy, as a son. They were seeing something he could not see. Could it be delirium? Was Sarah? "Daddy," said Sarah in a soft voice. She said, "You have to believe that the miracle has already begun, but you need faith to see it." At that moment, something inexplicable happened. The monitors, which for hours had been showing weak and irregular signals, began to stabilize. The nurse on duty rushed in. "Dr. Williams, come see this. Sarah's vital signs have completely changed." Dr. Williams hurried to the room, incredulous. He checked the machines twice, 3 times. This is impossible. Her heartbeat is normalizing. Her blood pressure is rising. I don't understand what is happening." Sarah kept smiling, looking at the same spot. She said, "It's time to rest now. That when I wake up, everything will be different." And Sarah closed her eyes, but now breathing calmly and steadily. The monitors showed strong and stable signs of life. Tommy finally stopped praying and came closer to David. "Mr. David, Our Lady said something very important to you." David, still in shock at what he was seeing on the monitors, knelt down to be at the boy's eye level. "What did she say, Tommy?" "She said, 'This is only the beginning.'" "That Sarah will get better, yes, but that you have a very big mission ahead, that many other children will need your help." Dr. Williams interrupted the conversation. "Mr. Harrison, I need to run new tests immediately. Something extraordinary is happening here. In 30 years of medicine, I have never seen such a sudden reversal." In the following hours, an entire team of doctors examined Sarah. X-rays, CT scans, blood tests. David walked through the hospital corridors like a man in a trance. Could it be possible? Could it be real? At 6 a.m., Dr. Williams called David into his office. His face was pale, as if he had seen a ghost. "Mr. Harrison, I don't know how to explain what I'm about to tell you. The tests show that the cancerous cells, they simply disappeared. They're not in remission, they're not shrinking. They've vanished. Completely." David clutched the chair. "What do you mean vanished?" "That's exactly it. It's as if they never existed. The liver, the lungs, the bone marrow, all normal. Perfectly normal. In 30 years, I've never seen anything like it. This is not medically possible." David left the office with trembling legs. In the room, Sarah was awake, sitting up in bed, with more color in her face than she had had in months. "Daddy, the doctor said I'm healed, completely healed." Tommy stood beside the bed, beaming with joy. "I knew it. I always knew the lady would take care of everything." David embraced them both and cried like he had never cried before. Tears of gratitude, relief, a happiness too great for his chest to contain. But the story was only beginning. 3 days later, Sarah was discharged. Her case spread through the hospital like wildfire. Doctors came from other states to examine the scans, trying to understand what had happened. The local media got hold of the story. Newspapers, television, radio stations, everyone wanted to know about the miracle of the children's hospital. But David, protecting the family's privacy, refused all interviews. "This is not about fame," he told Carol. "If it really was a miracle, it was a private gift from God to our family." But Tommy had other ideas. One week after Sarah's healing, the boy went to David. "Mr. David, the lady appeared in my dream again." David, who now took Tommy's dreams very seriously, paid full attention. "What did she say this time?" "She said Sarah was healed for a reason, that you and her father and daughter are going to help other sick children." That night, David couldn't sleep. He kept thinking about Tommy's words. Could it be that Sarah's healing was only the beginning of something much greater? The next day, he made a decision. He went to Tommy at school. "Tommy, I've been thinking a lot about what you told me. About helping other sick children." "Yes, Mr. David." "What if we created something to help families who don't have money for treatment? Do you know how many children go without healing simply because their parents are poor?" Tommy's eyes lit up. "That would be amazing. We could give them the same chance Sarah had." When Sarah heard her father's idea, she was deeply moved. "Daddy, that's wonderful. We know what it feels like to be desperate, not knowing what to do. If we can stop other families from going through that," David began immediately. He went to his lawyer to officially create the Sarah Foundation, an organization that would help low-income families cover medical treatments for children. "But I don't just want to write checks," David told the lawyer. "I want Sarah and Tommy to participate actively. They need to understand the value of helping others." The first family they decided to help was Tommy's own. David discovered that Carol was in debt with medical bills from when Tommy had pneumonia the year before. "Mr. David, I can't accept this," Carol said when he offered to pay off all her debts. "Carol, you gave me the greatest gift of my life, your son. Tommy saved my daughter with his prayers and his friendship. Please, let me help you now." With the debts cleared, Carol finally had financial peace. David also offered her a job at the foundation. "You understand better than anyone what it means to fight to give your child the best. I want you to help me find the families who need it the most." The Sarah Foundation was officially inaugurated in April 2022. David converted part of his mansion into offices. Sarah and Tommy helped in the afternoons, organizing letters from families asking for help and visiting hospitals. Sarah recorded an emotional video telling her story and asking for donations. The video went viral, not because of supernatural miracles, but because of the sincerity of a girl who simply wanted to help other children. In October, the foundation had already helped 47 families. Each case was carefully studied. They did not just want to give money, but to walk alongside each family with emotional support. Sarah began writing letters to the children undergoing treatment. "Hi, Maria. I know you are starting chemotherapy. I went through that too. It's scary at first, but you are stronger than you think. I am rooting for you. With love, Sarah." Tommy visited the hospitalized children and taught them games to help pass the time during treatment. "Mr. David," Tommy said one day, "do you know what saddens me the most in the hospital?" "What is it, son?" "It's not the sick children. They are brave. The saddest thing is the parents crying alone in the hallways, thinking they have to be strong all the time." "So, and what can we do for them? What if we create a group where parents can talk with other parents who went through the same thing?" Tommy's idea became the project Brave Parents. Every week at the foundation, parents of sick children gathered to talk and support one another. "You saved my sanity," said Rosa, the mother of a little girl. "I was drowning in sadness until I met you." In December, they organized a special Christmas party. All the families who had been helped were invited to celebrate at the Harrison Mansion. David watched dozens of children playing, some bald from chemo, others with hair just starting to grow back, all of them laughing together. The parents were animatedly chatting, sharing victories and hopes. "Sarah," David called, "what do you think of all this?" Sarah looked around and smiled. "I think this is what true family means, Dad. It's not just those who share the same blood. It's those who care for each other. Tommy came over carrying a small child. Mr. David, do you know what the greatest miracle of our story was? What was it, Tommy? It was you opening your heart to me that first day, because without that, nothing else would have happened. David hugged both children and realized Tommy was right. The true miracle had been a rich man deciding to talk with a poor boy who prayed on his doorstep. And so they continued, turning pain into purpose, building a network of love that would grow until it touched lives all over the entire world. If this story touched your heart, share it with someone who needs to be reminded that even in the darkest moments, we are never alone. And if you have your own story of faith to tell, share it with us in the comments, because sometimes all we need is a reminder that hope is possible, even when it feels the farthest away. Subscribe to the channel for more stories of miracles of the Virgin Mary. And in the comments, write with faith, Virgin Mary, intercede for us. That way, together, we will form a great chain of prayer and hope.